Good day, everyone. Nick Ottinger here with Team Conti Sim Performance. We are giving you guys a pro track guide here at Chicago Street Course. And this week, as you guys can see, I am utilizing a looser for our video purposes here. This is one I would prefer personally. You have a benchmark, looser, and tighter option this week. Please just try them all and just see what you guys feel best and more comfortable with getting lap time out of this track. But also just attacking the track. Comfort matters here, and just being able to actually run this tight course as you need to is very important. So, with that said, I did a 10 lap run here. I'm gonna give you guys a couple laps. Just let this first lap play out by itself, and then the second lap I'll debrief on my thought process, what I'm looking for, what the truck should be utilized, and looking to do, and really making it active enough for you as a driver. So, with that said, I'm gonna let this play the first lap, and then we'll debrief. All right, that's one full speed live lap at Chicago Street Course. This is 27.026. My second lap is actually a little bit quicker, and I actually want to debrief on that. So, what I'm going to be doing here is talking a little bit about our gear selection and what gear we're in and utilizing, and then our timing of downshifts and upshifts. Our timings matter at road course racing, especially in the stock car or stock, obviously, truck here. So, now markers are more of a reference point at road course racing for every driver. You notice up here, it's very hard to see on the screen most likely, even on mine. You have braking markings here, giving you the distance between before you actually get to the corner's apex. So here you already notice there's some obviously turn signal lanes or turning lanes that you can see on the road. Obviously, we're going opposite direction, like we're driving on the wrong side of the road here. And you're going to see a second set of turn lanes that I use as a reference personally to start lifting off the throttle and kind of dictating how much speed I'm carrying at that point throughout a run. Early on, we got the grip, we got the capability of the tires to grip in our downshifts and really get to the front brake, the brakes to the front and rely on the stopping power of the brakes. So with that in mind, I'm going to slow this down once we get closer to our braking zone so you guys can see this second set of actual turn lanes. And just to start that off, my thought process is timing my downshift from third to second at the right point. I do not upshift to fourth in this small straightaway at the start finish line all the way till turn one, this left hander. I always stay in third gear if we're utilizing the gear on looser. And that's just to make sure I'm not adding extra time into having to slow the car or truck down, and making sure I'm not taking extra lap time away with having to be precise on my blipping on the throttle to match my rev of the engine. So gonna let this slow up a little bit. Here we obviously crossed the first one, and now you're gonna start seeing this second set of lines here. You can see I'm starting to lift before it, right? And later on in a run, I'm going to actually use these markers to where I'm going to start lifting and braking at this point. Now you can see I'm going to have a low crossover point in my brake and throttle trace to where that's having a crossover point, let's just say about 20%, 15%, okay? It's very important at a road course to recognize that, not using so much braking and then lifting off the gas around like 50% and having that crossover around there. Because now you're requiring the rear axle to really work and overwork in stopping power, considering how much brake you got to the front or rear. You're just more prone to actually start your wheel hopping a lot earlier because of that high stopping power and high crossover point. So you can see in my braking, I'm still straight line braking in this moment, slowing it down. Gonna rev match here briefly once I get to really the 3 to 2 zone, no matter what. In the 3 to 2 zone, and I'll back this up a little bit so you guys can see. This is our 3 sign on the wall to the left, and this is our 2 sign, obviously. And this zone is when I'm going to actually rev match to do my downshift from third to second. You can see straight line braking. And to this point, I finally start working to a little bit angle to the left, angling my truck to get as close to this wall as possible. The objective for me is making sure I'm not sliding the front with too much brake and having too much brake pressure while turning the wheel once I get more steering angle to the left. I'm doing that same mindset to the right as well. You don't want to use too much steering while you're on heavy brake load because that's just giving you more resistance to actually turn the truck. As you can see, slowing it down a little bit more, using a little bit more wheel to angle in, getting off the brake a little bit more as well. And I just talked about this, obviously, about our timing. When we are obviously timing to get off the brake, timing to downshift, and get back to the throttle. That is what racing is your timings to shaping corners, getting off the brake, and then generating that lap time by being in the throttle. You can see here, I'm pretty much having a lot of wheel angle to the left, 45 degrees here. Barely using any brake. This is to make sure I'm not slipping the front tires to where I can hit the angle I want here at this 90-degree left angle. You can see still completely off of it and wrapping right there on almost clipping the left side of the truck to the wall. Now, partial throttle as soon as I hit the apex, because you see this is in a 90-degree corner, I'm going to utilize majority of the exit here. And I'm going to stop it right here because it's very important as a driver to know this is where you're actually going to have a little bit of slope difference. This lane here, I'm saying lane because obviously it's a street course, and you have a lot better ability to kind of exit tighter than what I did. And with that comes a lot better ability to set up your straight drive off and get to the power sooner. You know, loading the rear of the truck, the left rear, the right rear as evenly as possible, and getting a grip in this lane here. You can still venture all the way out here, but you're going to have to start sliding the right rear the closer you get to this wall, because the closer you get, the more distance you're actually carrying and getting away from the apex of turn one. So in that zone here, all the way to this Blue Cross and Blue Shield logos on the wall, it's pretty consistent to where you're going to slide the right rear the longer you go into a run. You're going to get a little bit tighter at turn one, and that's going to wash you out if you carry too much speed and the truck does not have that grip in the front, which is going to be important for you to understand to manage your entry angle and speed to your apex of turn one. Now, let this go here again. Still second gear. Biggest objective here is getting to the left side. And when we're crossing this double yellow, it's very important to try to load the front as straight as you can, because this whole braking phase is not really a straight braking zone, because you have to get all the way from the right to the left and really pinpoint in the later stages of your braking zone when to get off the brake pedal, so you can carry the angle in like we did for turn one, but now we're in the opposite direction, carrying a 90-degree angle to the right in this corner and maximizing our exit angle. We don't have as much, exit distance we can utilize because turn two's exit is much more narrow on exit and create and drive and really having to cut our exit off. So braking here, really pinpointing as much as you can, straight line braking at the latest point, and then getting off of it to angle into here, because that's going a little bit downhill, just a tiny bit into this apex. You can see, again, completely off the brake, the more wheel inputs, I'm actually getting to my max wheel angle to shape getting to this apex. Off the brake, going to start generating throttle as soon as I hit apex. You can see right here, center of it, getting off of it. And here is a tricky section as well for most drivers and even pro sim racers across the board at this track, is how you're generating a drive off. Much like turn one exit, the closer you get to the wall, the easier it is to slip that outside tire. So the closer you can actually pin your exit without costing exit momentum to manage a straight exit in this lane before you get to this section, because you can see you have a little bit of a variation here and how it's actually dipping down the closer you get to the wall. That's going to give you better traction, more consistent traction for straighter drive, especially when you're still in second gear and trying to get lateral grip to the tires. So play this at speed. I'm going to go all the way from second to third here, and then I'm going to do this again to fourth while I'm actually in this bend from third to fourth as well. Now, later in the run and even early on, depending on track conditions, you can even just lift here to balance your truck by going halfway on your throttle percentage, 50%, 70%, to really set up for your angle and off of this kink. You can see I'm going to start lifting here, not as quick of a rate as I normally would in most cases, in full lift braking, because I'm actually braking when I'm actually getting into this second lane. I'll back this up again a little bit. You can see when I'm braking, straight lining the exit of the kink, lifting, and then transitioning to the brake to make sure I'm actually getting to my third gear selection smooth. Now, what you can do as a driver, I like this personally, is not going straight to second gear, because if I go to second gear too early, I'm actually taking a little bit more speed away, because how much the engine's actually helping me slow the truck down to begin with in a straighter line. The closer you get to this left side, the bumpier areas that we talked about in exit turn 2, still same way. It's still pretty bumpy in this section. And if you can time where you're staying in third, limit how much braking you're using in this whole section, it's going to pay off for you to actually have a more stable entry into, probably the most treacherous part of this racetrack or this street course. And downshifting, pointing the truck as early as you can here without shortcutting it is going to be pretty imperative to make sure we're carrying the entry speed we need. So I'm going to back this up again. When I go to my second downshift to third to second, it's going to be after this one sign. And that's just to make sure I'm turning into the corner and can actually time my downshift and time how much entry speed I need to dissipate even more, and just giving me as a driver more capability to control my avenue into this corner. That's the objective here, is just to make sure I'm carrying entry speed to this apex, obviously getting close to this wall, getting off the brake, a little partial throttle to carry some speed back here in this little small section. And then here, another treacherous part on balancing the truck out. Just making sure we're getting the truck to turn early. I would not turn later than when the McDonald's logo is obviously completely gone. You want to push the front of the truck, make sure it's reactive to what you're doing by limiting how much brake pressure you're having here. And the more wheel input you use, the more you have to get off that brake. Remember that quality again. We talked about it in turn 1 and turn 2. It's very important in this section. And it's very important to make sure we're not shortcutting this exit either and getting to where we're actually hitting the wall here. You do not want to clip the wall here one bit, because that's going to get you offline, and that's going to screw majority of the momentum section of this racetrack up. So second gear still, and I'm going to let this play all the way, and I'm going to keep it in third here. I'm going to let it hit the chip quite a few times, because I don't want to add an extra shift up to fourth, costing some time, but also I don't want to add an extra, more importantly, downshift from fourth to third in this section. I'm going to be using in this section completely going down to second. That's the lowest gear I'm going to get to on this racetrack. I'm not using first, I'm using second. That's going to help me conserve rear tires and not heat them up too much off these slow 90-degree corners. So keep this kind of going here. I'm braking before I even get to the 4 sign on the wall. Very important. Straight line brake. Get as close as you can over here. Make sure you're just straightening your brake, straightening your wheel, keeping that quality of staying on the pedal and not using too much to wheel hop in this section. Don't just, if you need to balance some braking, move some front brake if you need to more to feel more comfortable, near the top of the pedal, or take some away, put some rear bias to the rear to help you feel a little bit more stable at the initial part of your braking. Very important to get your turn in, and it's going to be angling just a hair before the 1 sign here, and then really cutting it in and trying to get off this brake completely again. If you're not off this brake completely by this double yellow line, more often than not, you're going to slide that front to where you don't have as much response trying to hug this apex angle of this left-hander. Same qualities we had in turn 2, partial throttle, trying to carry a straight exit off the corner, going to utilize the full exit of this corner, and make sure we're making lap time in this phase. Now, I think a pretty important quality here to recognize, we're going over a bridge here. And the height of this bridge, very important to where we get to the peak of this bridge, the truck's going to feel light, right? So as a driver, I'm already thinking, how can I control the throttle here? How can I control keeping the rear traction and keeping that to where I'm just not slipping the rear tires and burning the rear tires when I'm at the peak of this hill? It's a simple concept. Just lift a little bit once you get close to the peak of it and once you're going downhill, so you can really manage what you need to do and keeping the rear tires and to the racetrack here, to the street course. Now, very important how you need a straight line brake into this section. You do not want to shortcut your entry. You want to make sure you're turning relatively the latest possible avenue you can, so you're off the brake completely and you have all the grip to the front tires as possible, like we talked about in turn 1, 2, 3, and 4, and qualities like that. That's just for you as a driver. In this section, you're going downhill off this bridge into a really heavy braking zone, so it's really important to stay in second gear and not have to rev match by getting, too much throttle and getting wheel hopping. Give yourself a little bit more capability and potential, stay in second gear, and utilize this whole lane closest to the wall. Very important to straight line brake in this section. You will have a little bit of splitter contact, but additionally, the closer you get to that wall, the better ability you're going to have to stop, slow your entry speed down. If you feel like you can't slow your entry speed down, 2 things are happening. You're turning the wheel too early or too much pedal, and then sliding the inside of your right front because you're actually unloading it and putting all that weight to the left front, or you're just, in a nutshell, you're carrying too much entry speed and braking too late. So you can see I got a lot of potential here. A little bit of braking all the way to this point and off the brake. Treating it with a max wheel angle. I'm also getting back to the throttle a little bit now, and this same exact approach of hitting right at the center of these apexes and getting back to partial throttle. That's to carry exit momentum and generate some exit momentum by throttle. And here, this is probably going to be the sluggish, probably the most sluggish area of the track that we'll have with this gear selection, and it is designed that way, is to make sure we're not generating too much wheel spin in this section, because this is an area where it's very important not to get the tires too hot when we're going into the fountain section. So remember that. I'm staying in second gear for this whole point, still staying in second gear, and I'm going to stay in second gear for the duration of the rest of the lap until I shift up to third near the start finish line. Now here, very important quality, not full throttle as you can see. That's as designed to make sure I give myself as much capability and not spinning the tires when I'm actually going through these bumps here and the slope angle of this track. So here I'm lifting, starting to turn at my entry, shaping my entry here and not shortcutting this. If we shortcut this with too little speed and we get completely off the throttle and shape our wheel angle like we are, we're going to start really angle into this wall and clip it. So we want to get as close as we can here. And I'm staying in partial throttle on purpose. I'm lifting a little earlier to help set my entry up. Help set my entry up by just even backing it up, and overall by lifting a little bit if that's possible. In most cases, just so you're not carrying, the wrong angle into the corner. You want to make sure you got the front and rear connected. And if you got the front point like where you want it and early as you want it, now you can use the throttle to stay consistent with it to make sure you're carrying the entry speed and angle off of this little kink here into the carousel. See, partial throttle, starting to shape my wheel back to the left. Now, a couple ways to do this. You can go in third gear once you get 5-10 laps to a run, perfectly fine. And you can even do that on the first lap, whatever you feel comfortable with doing. Now, you can carry a lot of potential and speed to the center of this carousel while shaping this, angle to the left right near the statue here, right? So if you're doing that, you can do a couple things. You can push the truck tight, make sure you're, in that avenue. You're not going to have as much response getting the truck to turn. So it's really key not to. It's really key to find your limit on throttle in this section where the truck's just not going to turn. And if it does turn with that much throttle and you're using all that wheel input, you're actually sliding the rear, then you got two things happening. You're carrying too much throttle with how much wheel angle you have to the left. So now you know you need to back your throttle up a little bit. This section is all about rhythm and keeping some momentum built up and trying to hug the exit of this carousel around the fountain as tight as you can to make lap time, especially here because it starts straightening out and then it'll start angling really aggressive back to the left with a sharper angle. Closer you get to this section here, partial throttle, better you'll be in helping stabilize the truck and giving yourself better ability to do your directional change back to the right. Now, obviously I'm pretty far left here, almost full throttle, but I'm not getting full throttle on purpose. That's to make sure I'm setting up for my directional change to the right with not carrying too much throttle and keeping the front positive, keeping the front gripping, keeping the front capable with its potential it has. In this section, very simple, just managing the throttle here, keeping some momentum. And I'm going to slow this up once again and talk about how you need to load into this braking here as straight as possible. It's really bumpy in this section to carry a lot of speed. Truck's changing a lot dynamically. So in this avenue, straight line as much as you can in this zone. And you'll see a dip here. Once this dip happens, very important not to use too much braking pressure because once you get to this dip, now the front's actually going to load and compress down into this racetrack here, and the wheel angle you need to carry at this moment, turning away from the wall to this apex, matters drastically. You can induce a tight phase in this section because you're actually locking the front tires up. So remember to start releasing this pedal a little bit, especially when you're getting ready to compress so you can actually turn the wheel. And then timing when you get completely off the brake, really important because you're trying to hug the wall here, just like you would every other track. And corner on this racetrack. So partial throttle again, pretty sluggish, just like we were, earlier in this lap time. And really important to try to exit as tight as you can to the wall and not track out to this wall too early because now you're going to start inducing a lot of tight qualities. You just want to actually keep the car and truck, whatever it is, in this case the truck, as straight as possible, going up the top of the hill and over the bridge here. You can see not full throttle again, just trying to keep the traction to it. And once I'm actually got the grip, I'm going to actually start going down the hill here. I can start using more throttle, feel more confident. And here, once again, finding the braking point is those two actual, I'll back it up here, those two actual turn lanes. You can see the arrows here. There's going to be some references for you to start lifting at that point, start braking in a straight line, very much just like you would turn one, finding the point where you're straight line braking and then trailing off this brake to get off of it completely, angling towards these walls as close as you can, getting off of it completely, at the right timing. More wheel input you add, the easier it is to get some front positive turn, at this slow speed. Angling it here, partial throttle again, a little bit tighter of an exit than you notice, most corners here, to try to do the same qualities of not slipping the outside tires when I get, to the wall. That's just to help straight drive, once again, not really hurt, handling and lap time. So that's kind of debriefing the actual lap. Some of this stuff's going to change where you can go into the corner a little bit further because you're not carrying as much entry speed overall on when you get to the entry zone, just because lap time's dissipated, and most commonly your grip's dissipated, coming off the corners with having more wheel spin. So obviously picked up half a tenth on the second lap. That's, a nutshell. I appreciate you guys sitting through this video. Hopefully you learned, my mindset towards how I'm approaching this track, some qualities that you need to think about hitting your marks at this track. And if you got any questions, please reach out. I'm here this week on Helping with Chicago, and it's a really fun avenue for me to kind of tackle these road courses with TCSP. So got any questions, please reach out. Always here to help.